I'm going to make a bold prediction I think a lot of you guys are going to disagree with, but I think Donald Trump has a chance of losing this election before he even gets to the general. I think he could lose in the primary. Now, this is coming off a big Donald Trump win in Iowa. Got 51% of the vote. 21% went to Ron DeSantis. Only 19% went to Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley won one county by a single vote. One vote. First of all, let me give my takeaways from this primary. Number one, Ron DeSantis, it's time to stop. It's time to quit. Your campaign's going nowhere, and you had a tremendous amount of money and momentum going into this race. People thought that he was going to be a smarter, more dangerous version of Donald Trump, yet he lacks one of the fundamental things Donald Trump has, which is charisma and humor. He is an awkward mess, and his campaign is falling apart from the insides. The donors, the establishment, have already left him. They're already going to Nikki, and they have reason to do that. But I just want to say this, I'm not endorsing any of these people. All these people suck. The fact of the matter is, the establishment has left Ron DeSantis, and therefore his campaign is dead in the water. It's time to quit. Now, I want to look at this fact, that the Iowa caucus does not determine who necessarily becomes the president and who necessarily becomes the nominee of their respective party. Now, it looks like a better indicator if you're a Democrat, though Pete Buttigieg did technically win in terms of delegates, but not the popular vote in Iowa in 2020, and then Joe Biden became the nominee. But among the Republicans, Mike Huckabee, Rick Santorum, Ted Cruz, they won the Iowa caucus, but they definitely did not win their nomination. Just because Donald Trump performed it well in Iowa does not guarantee him a victory. It is the first election in the 2024 season, so we gotta see how things play out. Next thing we're going to be seeing is New Hampshire. And the fact of the matter is, in New Hampshire, Nikki Haley is performing decently in the polls. Not amazingly, not crushing Donald Trump or anything of that nature, but she is performing competitively in New Hampshire. And she's been performing that way for about like a month, maybe a little bit more than that, right? And now that Chris Christie is gone, that subsection of Republican voters in New Hampshire who thought, I think I'm going to vote for Chris Christie, a guy who made his entire campaign being anti-Trump, 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 those people aren't going to go to Trump. And I doubt they're going to go to DeSantis because everybody sees that DeSantis is dead in the water. They're going to go to Nikki Haley. And if Nikki Haley could win in New Hampshire, I think that that gives her momentum. And if she has momentum and maybe performs either competitively or wins in Nevada, then comes South Carolina. And she was the former governor of South Carolina. A good amount of delegates there, a decent-sized population. If she could win in her own home state, which I think is possible, especially if she has momentum, especially with the fact that the establishment is behind her, she could win in South Carolina. And at some point, DeSantis is going to drop out. Now, my question is he going to drop out and endorse Nikki because the establishment wants him to? Or is he going to endorse Trump because that's smarter for his career? I don't know. You know, we're going to have a few primaries after South Carolina, Michigan, Idaho, Michigan again. That's a caucus and that's a primary. All right. Missouri, DC, North Dakota, and so on and so forth. Then we get to Super Tuesday, and we got a ton of states, a large amount of delegates. Super Tuesday could really decide who's going to win and who's not going to win. Let me go back in time for a second, back to 2020. In 2020, Bernie Sanders won the popular vote in Iowa. Bernie Sanders did very well in New Hampshire. Bernie Sanders did extremely well in Nevada. He had momentum, but he didn't win in South Carolina. Joe Biden won. At that point, there was still multiple people in the race trying to compete, and then Super Tuesday was coming, and right before Super Tuesday happened, Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar dropped out and endorsed Joe Biden, who at that point only won in South Carolina. Elizabeth Warren was still in the race, so splitting the progressive vote. When it narrowed down, when those endorsements came, even though Bernie Sanders was actually performing exceptionally well in the polls going into Super Tuesday, Bernie Sanders still lost because the establishment coalesced behind Joe Biden. Can the establishment do the same thing against Donald Trump and for Nikki Haley? I don't know that for a fact. But if they do that, well, that could make Donald Trump lose. There's potential there. There's a lot of Republicans, especially in the establishment, that don't like Donald Trump. And I'm sure there's a lot of more moderate Republicans that see Donald Trump as a threat to their chances of winning. And if they could unify against him, I think that he could lose. And if he loses the primary, I can't imagine what happens to the Republican Party in the general. Personally, I think he goes AWOL. I think he goes and makes a third party personally, but that's just my prediction there. I can't guarantee you Donald Trump is going to win or Donald Trump is going to lose, but what I can say is there will be a competitive primary for sure. And it's not going to be between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is done. And we'll see what happens. One election happened. There's still a lot more to take place, and there's a lot more potential plot twists that could happen. Nikki Haley is going into New Hampshire looking good, and New Hampshire could be that springboard that she needs to perform well in Nevada, and they're then going into her own home state with South Carolina. And if the establishment and the anti-Trump folks in the Republican Party are smart, they better figure things out and get Ron DeSantis to quit and endorse Nikki Haley. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen, and I want to clarify that this is not an endorsement of any of these people. They all suck. But I'm just being honest, folks. I don't think Donald Trump necessarily has this in the bag. We got to be patient and we got to see. That's all I really got to say. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.